feet wide. Contained in the display area of the cargo hold are over 100 exhibits that include 4 1,200-gallon aquariums stocked with fish native to the Great Lakes. Also, the recovered lifeboats from the freighter Edmund Fitzgerald, which sank during a severe storm November 10, 1975. And we lost all 29 crew members aboard that boat just as it sank 530 feet to the bottom of Lake Superior.
Vessels to one of the two locks, mostly based on the size. They gotta call in and get their lock assignment. And then the building between the second and third lock is the Davis Building, opened in 1914. In there, Marine Post Office and reporting room. All vessels that pass through here are required to hand in a written or email report on the amount and type of cargo, as well as any passengers they have on board. And there's no toll to any ship of any nationality to use the locks. Operated by the Army Corps of Engineers, about 120 people work here. And the funds come from the good old U.S. government.
Awesome.
No. Not totally, but yeah, there's a harbor maintenance fund that funds a lot of complexes like this, and the powerhouse and everything, but for the most part. So as we enter here, you see on the left side, lower part to the Soo Locks Park, benches, water fountain, there's a restroom, there's an upper part to the park where there's a viewing platform there with 3 levels, and a visitor center behind it with exhibits and information. All free to come in the park, you can check it out. And as we enter here, on the very lower part, there's silver railings. Those are the top of the winter guard gates. They shut those in the winter to keep ice from damaging the lock. But the locks actually do close every year, January 15th through March 25th, and the reason is because of ice. 1 to 5 feet thick of ice on the St. Mary's River and large portions of Lake Superior. So they use that time to completely drain the locks of all the water. They do inspections, repairs, clean the tunnels and filling sills all out. You should see the stuff that falls off of freighters and our tour boats that gets caught in those tunnels. Yellow blocks on them. They use that big red crane and they lower those down into those slots one by one and build a wall, and that's how the water flow is stopped from entering the lock, so they can completely dewater them in the winter. So they put a wall above and below, and then all the water that's at low pool when we enter, that does have to be pumped out in the winter. Otherwise the lock is operated by gravity up and down the 21 feet. Patio Bridge, constructed in 1913. That is the largest of its kind in the world. Very unusual because it is a double leaf railroad bascule bridge. Typically those are 1 leaf, but this one's got 2. And each section is very evenly balanced with a large counterweight of concrete. It's about 1,000 tons in each, hanging on both sides. 40 horsepower motor operates each section, and then 10 horsepower motor locks the 2 sections together, and then the train can cross over. And then off to the right, there's 9 camelback trusses that cross over some small islands, and the remaining rapids, we'll show you those later. And then eventually there's a 3rd movable section to the bridge, and that's a swing bridge, and we'll see that going down the canals in a Canadian lock. So pretty neat historic train bridge here, with 3 different movable parts, all within about a mile-long span. Used about 2-3 times a day or so to haul cargo to and from the Algoma steel plant, and we're going to go visit there shortly. Right there, tall gray cylinders used to mix concrete. Pile of sand up there, and then a few piles of aggregate freighters been dropping off. And then ahead of that, there's a very long strip of land up there. Polish steamship company named Soo, and it was built in 2010, 644 feet long, and it is also 78 feet wide. So most of the fleet here, they have to in the Purvis Marine Scrapyard, and if you young kids and boaters know about the Anglian lady, she's in the dry dock back there too. Yep. Anglian lady is a tugboat for Purvis Marine Limited based out of Soo Locks in Canada. She usually pushes the Iron Master barge, which is a barge that hauls steel coils. More finer and dark looking than the Coke is here on the corner. So shortly you're going to see the barge, the Maumi. And that barge was built back in 1953. 750 feet long, 70 feet wide, carries about 25,500 tons of cargo. And Victory is the tugboat that is paired with her, which was built in 1980. 140 feet long, 43 feet wide. Now paired together, they're 815 feet long, just a little over 815 feet long. So you can see she's got an unloading boom on her. That is about 250 foot long. It's got a at least inch thick conveyor belt attached to it that grabs it, right? I think I can tap it in something smaller of a vessel because unloading a good 6 hours or so. So one of the finished products of the steel plant coming up here on the left, well, the steel, they're sitting cradles on the dock here, because we don't want them to roll around. They weigh 20 to 50,000 pounds a piece, or 10 to 100,000 dollars per roll. Just depends on the size of the coil and type of steel that it is. WI Stock Purvis is a Purvis Marine Limited bar, or tugboat, makes for the barge like that. She'll put it down. The barge, I think it was with 400 coils on there sometimes. Much more safe than an outboat. Take on the side of the barge and then on the highway. Flatbed truck might be able to take two. So they move these around by using a big heavy duty forklift. So on the left, it opens to the water. There was a bottle stretched across and the way to the canal and scratch. We're generating station. Regular electric power plant over on the canal. So you've got three units of regular electric power plant. And you can get to the train trusses and bridges over there. You can access the rapids on the other side if you want to do some fly fishing, if you got a Canadian fishing license. Otherwise, you can just kind of wander around. It's pretty neat. The canal here, the walls are constructed on the red sandstone that was dredged out of here in the late 1800s as they were building the lock. A lot of the buildings you're going to see on site also constructed out of this sandstone. Same ridge that creates the Tequamanon Falls, the pictured rocks cruises, and the place on the other side, and then the train can cross over. We got another type of swing bridge up ahead, the orange steel structure. That's their emergency dam for this canal, constructed in 1895 also. Now that was only used one time ever in an emergency situation. June 9th, 1909, there was a passenger boat tied up at Upper Pool in the lock and a freighter tied up behind it, just getting ready to close the upper gates when all of a sudden, crash, a freighter came ramming into the lower gates on the upbound transit due to a misunderstood engine room signal. Back then they just had bells and whistles to communicate with. So swept the two boats off their mooring lines up here. And this is Canal Park. It's all free to come in here. You can get to Whitefish Island for free. And how you do that, you walk across the top of the lock gates. You can bring a bicycle over there if you want. You cannot bring anything that floats though. Don't try to stick a pool floaty in your pocket either. Get down the rapids. When we exit the lock here, there are the winter gates on the lower part. The railings are black. Those are the original winter guard gates for that lock from 1895. I don't think they use them anymore. They're just still there. Completed in 1975 home of their city government. This is basically the area here where the ferry used to cross over back and forth before the International Bridge opened behind us in 1962. And then the park there on the left is the Francis H. Clerk Park. In the year 1959, Queen Elizabeth II and Prince Philip visited Sault Ste. Marie at that park. The city behind the blue and white building, the Iron Masters tucked away there. The tugboat that usually pushes her is in the dry dock, where we went up to visit the export dockers, the Anglian lady. So the Iron Masters had a break for quite a few months. And then once we pass the building, there's another barge tied up to the right side of the Iron Master. There it is. PML 2501. And that's a chemical barge. Used to haul benzene and coal tar, which are byproducts of the coke making process. Useful in the cosmetics industries, but also road surfacing, blacktop, and fertilizer. Gross. And then we got the Ontario Bushplane Museum there, opened in 1986. That museum contains many restored aircraft as well as a complete history of the Canadian Forest Fire Service. Firefighting seaplanes were first used in